Hi, hello, my name's Robin Lambert, I'm 18 years old and living with cerebral palsy, but you guys know me as the T-Rex and you're watching my T-Rex Life. So what are we talking about today? Well, disability and how it doesn't equal being in a wheelchair. Excuse me Robin, what do you mean? Of course it does. What are you talking about? You've lost me? I'm gone. I'm sorry, I'm gone. You know, it's true. Disabilities come in a variety of different types and on a huge spectrum of severity. You know, just because you're disabled doesn't mean that you use a wheelchair. Sometimes it has nothing to do with your legs or your mobility at all. Haha, Robin, I was joking. I was playing with you. Of course we know that, you know. We know you can be disabled and not use a wheelchair. You can be blind or deaf. Oh, well, you know, I was kind of just assuming that it was a lack of knowledge that was resulting in some of the really ignorant and ableist things that have been happening in the media lately in regards to accessible facilities such as accessible bathrooms and accessible parking. I was kind of just hoping that you thought those areas were needed only if you were in a wheelchair, and that's why people have been leaving nasty notes for people on windscreens and hurling verbal abuse at people. Maybe if it's not, maybe you need this video to educate you guys. So here I am, talking about accessible spaces and how they're not just for people in wheelchairs. Now I'm saying this as a part-time wheelchair user, so I've had both experiences. I've had experiences using these spaces as a person using a wheelchair and as a person who's not using a wheelchair. So Robin, you think you've got so much knowledge? Tell us why you would use these spaces if you're not in a wheelchair. Well, there's a variety of reasons why people use accessible spaces. And some of them have nothing to do with a person's mobility, their legs, or their ability to walk. As for disabled parking, some people may just not be able to walk as far as others because of a disability, and they may require the spaces which are closest to their facility that they are attending, which is often the case with accessible parking bays. There's a number of conditions that could lead to this, and a lot of them may not be visible to the eye. You know, the person could have a heart condition or some other cardiovascular condition, which means they can't walk as far as your average able-bodied person. A person may have other mobility issues which don't require the use of a wheelchair, but might mean they need some extra space to get out of the car. Even when I'm not using my wheelchair, I'm glad to have the extra space of a disabled parking bay, because I find getting in and out of the car and getting my legs in the right position and getting out without falling over quite difficult when there's a car parked right next to me. Families might use an accessible parking bay because they need extra room to get their kids with disabilities out of the car, whether this is because they need to get them into a wheelchair or they just need the extra space to help them out of the car. So again, there's a variety of different reasons why someone might use an accessible parking bay. As for an accessible toilet, there's just as many reasons as to why someone may need access to a facility like this. Some people may have certain medications in which they may need to inject or insert into their bodies in another way, in which they need privacy and a bit of extra space. Some people may need to change or alter a colostomy bag or use a catheter. Again, they might need the extra space to do this, or even just the privacy. Other people might have mobility issues, which they not only need the extra space in an accessible toilet, but they might also need the handrails and other things that are often in accessible toilets. Some people may have conditions in which they urgently or frequently need to go to the toilet, and an accessible toilet is often the one that's free in most instances. And as for an accessible toilet, it's exactly that. It's an accessible toilet. It's not a disabled toilet or a wheelchair toilet. So some people may even use it when they don't have a disability. Take for instance a dad that might want to take his little girl to the toilet without having to take her into the men's toilet. So as you can see, there's a variety of different reasons, most of which I probably haven't even covered, why someone might need access to accessible spaces and facilities. A lot of these are not recognizable just by taking a quick glance at someone. Unless you see me walking around, my disability is not always terribly visible. So I've often been sat on the train in the priority seat because it's been the only seat that's been available, and people have given me like glances or looked at me as if I shouldn't be there or have muttered something under their breath. And, you know, I have every right to be in that space. I can't stand up on trains a lot of the time, and I need a seat. So when that's the only seat available, that's the seat in which I'm going to sit in. For this reason, I've started taking a cane on the train sometimes as a visual indication to able-bodied people that I am in fact disabled and I do actually need that seat. But at the end of the day, it shouldn't be up to me or anybody else to prove to anybody else why they need access to these facilities. Now, I know a lot of these people who have been leaving these notes or getting into these arguments have been trying to do the right thing. They haven't seen the person as having a disability, and they've been trying to stop people without disabilities using these facilities so that the people who really need them can. But at the end of the day, unless you actually know someone and you know their story, it's just too hard to tell whether they might need access to these spaces or not. And by you making these assumptions, it can often be very hurtful and offensive to people. This perception that having a disability means that you're in a wheelchair, and only in a wheelchair, is very harmful to the disabled and able-bodied community. To be an accepting and inclusive society, we need to broaden this definition of disability to cater for everyone's needs, make sure that we include people regardless of their physical ability. So next time you go to stop someone, sit back and consider how you might be hurting someone if you get it wrong. And just consider whether it's really necessary that you pass that judgment or make that comment. Sure, if there's someone in a disabled parking bay without their permit on display, it's pretty obvious that they shouldn't be parking there. And that's a perfect opportunity to politely raise the issue. But if someone has a permit or is using an accessible facility, 99% of the time, they probably need it. Especially when it comes to disabled parking permits, they're not an easy thing to get. You have to have a medical professional fill out a form, and it's something that has to be renewed almost every year. Don't get me wrong, I get just as annoyed as every other disabled person when someone comes out of the disabled toilet and it's clear they've just been using it for a little bit of privacy so they can do a number 2 without being recognized. And I get just as annoyed when I go in there and that smell hits me, and I just know they could have done that in another toilet. But at the end of the day, even then I can't be 100% certain that they don't have a disability or a reason for needing that toilet. So I can't pass judgment, and neither can you. We've got to raise awareness that these facilities are very important to people with disabilities and therefore should be left to be used by people with disabilities. But we can't do that by passing judgment on other people. Like I said, unless we're 100% certain that that person is doing the wrong thing. And again, if we assume that to be disabled just means that someone is a wheelchair user, then there's a whole demographic of people that we're not including in our definition of disability, and we're not helping them to achieve everything they can and be included in this society the same way in which able-bodied people are. Anyway guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know your comments, your thoughts, your experiences down below, but most importantly, remember to stay shiny guys, because I love you.